and welcome back. This is Caroline. In today's video, we'll be doing a beachscapes painting. So I did one of this about a year back and I've received lots of good feedback that you enjoyed this kind of painting. So I thought today we will be doing a beach painting like this one here. And as you can see, I've done a few sketches. So the steps that I'll be showing you later on, they are all really simple and easy to follow, and it's very beginner friendly. So if you feel like painting beach today, do get your materials ready and paint along with me. Let's get into our materials. First off, let's look at the paints. And here I have the sandy area. We will be using a bit of yellow ochre for this one. And then for the waters, I have a few colors that I plan on playing around with. So I have here, which is turquoise blue, as we have some turquoise color here. And then we'll be adding in some Viridian Hue. This is the green, very bright green that we have here. And then to play along with more turquoise, I'll be adding in marine blue. And we have royal blue and ultramarine green light. So I'll be playing around with these 5 colors, mixing around with these 5 colors when we go into paint the blues here. Because here we have a little bit of ultramarine blue going on, so I'll be using this one here. This is a more mixture of turquoise blue, marine blue, and then this one will be a bit more of added Viridian, and royal blue might as well in some areas here. Not to worry if you do not have all of these paints. The general paints, the general colors that you need basically is a turquoise color, a Viridian Hue, this very bright green color, and French ultramarine blue. And then before we finish, we will add in some white gouache. So I'll be using this one here, or you may use any that you have. That's all for the paints, and then let's look at the brushes. So I'll be using 2 different brushes. One is a size 8 brush with natural hair, and then I'll be using a size 8 synthetic brush. So synthetic brush will be used for smaller areas and for more finer details. And then to lay out the paints, I'll be using the natural hair brush. So we have 2 brushes here. And then you can see that I have lots of white gouache paints here. And here I have, these are synthetic brush. And this one is size 30. We have size 0 and size 2. So I've just taken the 3 smallest brush that I have, synthetic brush that I no longer use, because what we're going to do later is we're going to open up the bristles and then tap it on to get all this splashes effect. And then for larger area, because I do not have a bigger synthetic brush, so I'm just using this old Chinese brush that I have here. Otherwise, you may use an old synthetic brush that is around size 6 or size 8, that will do. And yes, please use old brushes that you no longer use, because the technique that we'll be doing here will pretty much damage the bristles. And what we'll be required to do is to press it down and then open up the bristles like so. So if your brush is fairly new, I wouldn't recommend using it, so look for a brush that is old. Alright. And that will be for the brushes. And for paper, here I'm using 300 GSM compressed arches paper. And as you can see, I've already pre-sketched the outline of the beach. And then here is the reference photo we'll be using. I will include the link to this reference photo in the description below, so do go ahead and download it if you like to paint along. And here, looking at this sketch, you can see here I have the horizon, which is this here, and then these are the foam on top. This one will be this area, and then we have the second wave of foam, and that would be this area here. And then here at the bottom is where we see the sand of the beach, which is this area. So feel free to pause your screen right now if you like to follow the pencil sketch. Alright, let's dive into painting. And I'll be using my size 8 brush. And let's start off with a very light blue for the skies. And I'm taking turquoise blue and mixing in with lots of water to get a very light wash. Like this here. And then let's go in straight to paint the skies. And then I'm going to mix in marine blue and turquoise blue. And I'm going to paint and stop above where the foam is. And then I think I will darken this a little bit more. Like this, and then I see a little more darker blue towards the horizon, so let's do that. And I'm mixing in some royal blue to get this darker bluish color. And then slowly I'll draw in some lines, show the waves, and then I'll lift this up so that it doesn't spread too much upwards. As you can see, these blooms happening here. So this one spreads out a little too much, so what I will do is wash off, and with a clean brush just gently paint over like so, and then lifting it up so that it doesn't go upwards, and let it flow downwards. Okay, and then I'll bring this down a little bit more, because this is where this area is. And then here I'm going to add a little bit of green to our mixture. So I'm just following the colors from the reference picture. And we have a little bit on top. So not to worry if you paint over the white areas, because we will cover that with gouache later on. Okay, and then I will leave the foam area and then we move on to the water parts here. Let's keep going downwards, and I'll be using a bit more of green in this area. And then just play around with the few colors I mentioned earlier. I'm mixing in green with a bit of royal blue and a bit of turquoise to get different shades of colors going on in the ocean. And then we want to have darker colors right below the foam. That would be the shadows. So I'm going to drop a bit more paints underneath here. So feel free to play around and add more colors as long as the area is still wet. So we're doing lots of wet on wet technique here. And then I will paint in some lines to show the waves. And if you get harsh lines like this, just blend it off with water. And then let's bring it over here. And then here we have a little bit of a curve. And again, we will darken the areas underneath the foam. So at this point, do not worry to go as dark as possible. The darker it is, the better, because this will then create a very good contrast for us later on when we paint in the gouache. And then just draw some lines for the waves. And I forgot to mention earlier, for the paints, feel free to add in neutral tint if you like. So here I've mixed in a little bit of neutral tint to darken even more the shadow areas. And towards the end here, we have a very light blue. So in this area is all free, and just use your creativity and play around. Mix in different colors. You can have some parts having more blue, dark blue, then some parts having more green. And then some parts we have a lighter shade, so feel free to explore and let the watercolor do its thing. So if it's your first time painting something so free like this, and you like to have a practice before doing this painting, I have a video and I'll link it up on top or below in the description. And in that video we are doing lots of painting like this ones here, mixing different colors and different hues to get different results. So that one is a good practice to learn how to let loose and let the color flow. And yeah, do feel free to check it out. Okay, and then next we have our second foam. And then here we have the sandy area. And I think let's start with the sandy area here. So I'll be taking a very light yellow ochre and then following the shape from the reference picture, just painting in the sand. So I'm going to mix yellow ochre with a bit of blue here to get this darker brown for the shadows. Then we have the shadows appearing below the foam here. So taking a very, very light shade of blue, just going to paint it over here. And then if we zoom in to look here, you can see that this area is darker with a little bit more shadow, and then it's lighter on the bottom. So I'm going to add more shadows here and around here using the darker blue. Alright, so I'll leave it as it is now. And then let's start painting in the foam. It may look white on picture, but actually they do have a little bit of shadows around. And I've converted this picture into black and white, and all you can do is just reduce the saturation to 0 and you get something like this. And we can see here that here we have some of the shadows and here, and see a little bit of dark colors here. So I'll try to paint this in for the foam, and here we can add some greens, and then moving on to a bit of blue, and then some blues here, a little bit of green and blue. So let's do that, and I will start by pre-wetting the areas that need the shadows. So let's start here with clean water, wet this area. And then I'll grab a little bit of green. And then drop it in like so. So get this soft blend colors, and then here I'll add a bit of blue. And probably a little bit of neutral tint at the bottom, just a little bit down here. And then I'll bring it upwards a little bit on top. All the way up, and I'll just leave a little white space towards the end. And doing the same for the other side. And then here, let's add this darker blue. So this one will be lighter than the shadows here. And I'm going to bring it up. And we have a little bit here. This one is already dry, so I'm going to wet it a little bit more, and then I would like to darken it more. Alright, and not to worry if you're getting harsh edges like this, because we will cover this off with the white gouache splashes. And then let's do the same for this one here. Again, I'm going to wet the entire white space. And then just following the colors in the reference picture and adding in where I see the shadows are in the foam. And then I'll add some distant waves in the ocean. With some lines to show the tiny waves. Doing this will help to create more texture and details. Alright, and we are done for this layer. And next is, let's start with the fun part. So let's take out our gouache. And right now I'll grab this size 0 brush and just gently, lightly dip it into water. We do not want it to be fully wet, but just a little moist, because we are using dry brush for this technique. And then what I'm going to do is press it down and then turn it like this to open up the bristles. Once we have them open, and then let's paint in the foam. So right now I'll be painting on these edges to cover off the harsh lines. So try to open up your brush as much as possible, then we get this tinier fine lines, fine dots of the foam. The more it opens up, the better the result. So again, I'm following the reference picture, extending out the foam towards the blue areas, towards the waters. So I'm trying with I'll try this with a different brush, my size 2 brush, because the previous brush, the bristle didn't open up nicely. This one looks better. Okay, now that we are done covering up all the harsh borders, so you can see that after use, the bristles doesn't go back to its shape, it's all open up. So be sure to use an old brush that you don't need anymore. So I'll be using this one here. And then I'll be doing this around the shadow areas. As you can see, we have some of the white splatters on top of the shadows, so let's do that. Okay, we are done with the dry brushing, and then now I will grab this synthetic brush and then we will add a little bit of water into the gouache and then smoothen out some of the center of the foam. So I have more water in this brush and just blending off the white gouache so it doesn't look too much, and some on the corners here as well. And then just with water in my brush, I'll blend out some of the gouache. To make it less splattery, if there is too much splatters, just blend it out with water. You can see here, this one looks a bit too much, so I'll just blend this out. And right now, I'd like you to stand up, step back and take a look at this painting from far. And then from this angle, you'll be able to see any other areas which needs improvement. Now is the time to fix it. Just keep blending and softening certain areas so you get both smooth edges and also harsh splatters like this. So wash off your brush every time to remove the excess gouache, and then with a clean brush keep blending off. Okay, right now I'm happy with this, and then if there are areas where you think could do darker colors, we can still go back and darken the areas. For example, I'd like to make it darker slightly a bit here. So with my synthetic brush, I just apply the paints around here and try to avoid the gouache, and then blend off with clean water. Same with here. So having darker colors in between the waters and the foam will have a very big contrast, and that would make your painting stand out a little more, and also at the same time it helps to create depth. And then going back, cover back the areas that needs more splatters foam. Okay, and then now let's add some shadows for the sandy areas. I am going to just use the blue and mixing a little bit of yellow ochre, a little bit of neutral tint, and then paint in the shadows like so. And then blend it out. And then using the blue, I'm going to add some of the shadows. And then taking the same very light shade of blue, I'm going to add a bit of shadows to the white areas here. So just follow along the shape of the flow, just like that. Okay, and let's do some final touches. So grabbing this brush, I am going to mix a little bit of white gouache, and then let's add some tiny splatters in. And let's add a few dots here and there. And then let's do the same for the sandy areas. So I'm going to take yellow ochre and then let's cover off the top. And for tiny splatters, use another brush and tap it like so. This will create more fine splatters. So this is how the final piece looks like. And I hope that you enjoy watching me paint today's beachscapes. Do give it a try, it's really fun to paint. And as usual, if you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below and I'll get back to you. Otherwise, happy painting and I'll see you next week. Bye bye!